Once Upon Time. Was it actually any good? Well. Chapter 3, halfway through Doctor Who Flux now, and I think it's safe to say that this story was kind of a filler episode. While this story was good for the backstory of certain characters and kind of good for character development, I feel like this story wasn't 100% needed. That being said, I did like this episode. It was an average episode. There's a lot of it that I did enjoy, and then there's a lot that I really didn't like. Let's kick it off with Bel's story and the Daleks. Honestly, I had no idea that the Daleks were going to make a little cameo in this story, let alone this series. And so, because I'm a big fan of the Daleks, I was very excited to see them. I love seeing them. I always love seeing the Daleks. One little thing though, they looked very weird. Like, I don't know if they were CGI'd in or green screen, but they just looked... They look very odd, and I don't really know why. From her first few moments on screen, Bel seemed like a great little character. She was very courageous, and I really liked her character. So the episode basically picked up immediately where Chapter 2 left off, with the swarm clicking their fingers. Now the Doctor was basically sheltering in the time storm, and while the visuals of this scene were gorgeous, I love the colours, I love the vibrant visuals of this scene itself, I thought that this scene was rather odd. Now let's mention the hottest character in this episode. Whew! The 13th Doctor. To be fair, Jodie Whittaker's always super good looking, but in this episode, the darker coat on the 13th Doctor looked amazing. So with Dan and Diane in this episode, let me point out right now, I'm not gonna lie, the first moment that I saw Diane come onto screen, I honestly thought that her missing arm had swapped sides. But in the first little scene with Dan and Diane, I really liked that we got to dive a little bit deeper into Dan's backstory and his kind of love life. Like, I'm normally not into lovey-dovey stuff in Doctor Who, but it was nice that we got to know a little bit more about our new companion. So onto Yaz, I really liked that the Weeping Angels were following Yaz. All the scenes that we had where the Weeping Angels were stalking Yaz were really great and really intense scenes. The scene with Yaz in her police car was a really cool scene. It was dark, it was honestly really creepy. But I think that this scene played out really well with Yaz kind of looking in the rearview mirror, and as I said, a very creepy scene, very well acted and very well written. Now, as I mentioned, I like that we found out about Dan's backstory a little bit. One other character I also liked, was that we got to find out a little bit more about Vinda. As I mentioned at the start of this review, this episode really feels like a filler episode and is focused more on character development, which is fine, but you know, I think you don't really have to watch this episode, you can skip it. I mean, don't skip it, but you know, it's not 100% necessary unless you really want to know a bit more about the characters this series. Now, one surprising cameo in this episode that I 100% was not expecting was Jo Martin to show up. It was a very sneaky little cameo as she splintered with the current Doctor, and like, I love the Ruth Doctor, is that what she's called, but I love this incarnation of the Doctor. We still basically know nothing about her, but it's great to know that she's back in the series. For a moment we were also thrown back into the Liverpool tunnels in the 1820s, which we still basically know nothing about why we're being shown this, and it was only a small moment, but obviously there's something going on there because we have seen it in every episode so far, so I think that's going to lead up to something big. Now let's talk about the Cybermen. I loved seeing the Cybermen back, especially this version of the Cybermen. I love the mix of classic Who with new Who, and I think Chibnall has written them very well. However, for the promos of this episode, they were really showing off the Cybermen and made it seem like they are going to be one of the big bad kind of villains in this story. And sadly, that was not the case. I personally, as I mentioned, I love these Cybermen, I love the Cybermen in general. I would have loved to have seen more of them in this story. I think their little 2-minute scene it wasn't needed. It was nice to see them, but it wasn't needed. Like, that's just teasing. Back to Yaz now, and whatever video game she was playing, I want to play it. But again, this scene with the Weeping Angels was really, really good. And I think the Weeping Angels kind of showing up in this episode every now and then is a real teaser for the next episode next week. But as I mentioned, I rather like they were stalking Yaz and really going after her. I think they are already been so well written in Doctor Who Flux. Now I'm very confused as to why the Swarm leader looked very different in this story, for the majority of the story anyway. Like, is this another one, like another Swarm? Like, what happened there? Is there 3 of them, not 2 of them? Is that actually Diane? Like, I don't know. Now I also like that we got a little explanation about Passenger. Passenger is the big kind of henchman, and he is very, very creepy and very, very cool looking, and I like that we got to kind of know what exactly he is. So with Jo Martin's Doctor facing the Swarm as well in this story, I kind of came up with a mini sort of theory. Did the Ruth Doctor face off against the Swarm? Is that where the Swarm know the Doctor from? Like, the theory about the Ruth Doctor is that she's an incarnation between the 2nd and 3rd Doctor, and that her memory got wiped or something. So is that why the 13th Doctor can't remember the Swarm at all? So as the story continued, we got to see a little bit more of Belle, and I really like her character. I hope this is not the last that we see of her, and I don't think it is, because at the end of the episode it was revealed that her and Vinder are having a baby together, and are, like, I presume married or dating or something, and now Vinder's gone searching for her, so I presume this is not the last that we're going to see of Belle. Now I quickly also just want to mention the Grand Serpent, who was Vinder's boss. The Grand Serpent was obviously not a very nice person. Was anyone else getting kind of Swarm vibes from him? I feel like the Grand Serpent had the same kind of mannerisms, and the way he spoke was very similar to the Swarm. Now also, who was this older woman that appeared in this episode? Like, was that the Doctor's mother? Like, who? Like, she just came out of nowhere. Who is that? Now the ending to this story was very, very rushed and kind of just happened out of nowhere. The Maury would just suddenly back. Like, that annoyed me. Everyone was saved, the Maury were back, and it was over. I really didn't like that. Yeah, as I said, very rushed. One thing I did like towards the end of the episode was that the Swarm were really teasing Dan about Diane and kind of rubbing it in his face that, you know, we've got her. One other thing I thought in this episode was that the Doctor seemed very, very harsh towards Yaz and Dan. Just the way she was talking to them towards the end of the episode was a bit bitchy. Other than that, Vinder's reaction to the TARDIS was amazing. The visuals in this story were incredible. But one thing I didn't really like was that the green screen, when they were dropping Vinder back off on his home planet, I think it was that green screen was not a great green screen. But now, onto the cliffhanger. Now this cliffhanger, the cliffhangers this series have been incredible. The Angels have the TARDIS. Once again, an amazing cliffhanger. This was a perfect way to kind of end the episode with me on the edge of my seat. Like, I was freaking out. And now that the Angels have the TARDIS, the Doctor is like screwed. Like, they're in a lot of trouble. This episode jumped back and forth like a lot. I feel like there was too much happening all over the place, and we were kind of having to go, oh, but that happened there, oh yeah, what about that part, oh, and Belle, Diane, like there was a lot happening in this story. While I did like this episode, it was very average. It wasn't great, it wasn't terrible, it's kind of in the middle. It did feel very much like a kind of Moffat episode though, and as I said before, you really could skip this episode unless you just want to watch it for the character development. And although it did feel very rushed, I felt like this episode just kind of went by very quickly. I didn't like it as much as I wanted to, which I'm disappointed by, but there's always that episode every series of Doctor Who that I don't love. And so with that, my rating for Chapter 3 of Flux, Once Upon Time, is a 6 out of 10. Like I said, a very average episode, not great, not terrible, just okay. Although next week looks really, really good, the Weeping Angels are back, next week's story looks terrifying. Here's a little snippet.
Can you state your name, please?
Claire Brown.
We're missing a little girl. 10 years old. It's happening again.
Was that scarecrow there a minute ago?
Everyone in the village disappeared. The 28th of November, 1967. Tonight.
Gerald, what's going on?
Jericho, wait!
I'm not blinking!
The Weeping Angels are back next week in Village of the Angels, written by Chris Chibnall and the writer of Series 12's The Haunting of Villa Diodati. I'm very excited for next week's episode. It looks fantastic, it looks scary. Could Village of the Angels be the best chapter of Doctor Who Flux? Quite possibly.
Hello, this is Sylvester McCoy here, Doctor Who number 7. I want to say, Whovians, don't forget to subscribe to Whovian Comely. There's a new video every week. And you don't have to be comely to watch it. You can be uncomely too.